The first thing I heard was the glass. Not the romantic kind, not a toast. A hard clink like someone set a bottle down too fast, followed by the wet slap of cold liquid soaking through satin. My sister Tessa's arms were wrapped around me in what looked like a sweet pre-ceremony hug. Her cheek pressed to mine, her hands warm on my back, her voice soft enough to sound loving to anyone standing more than a foot away. Then she tipped the full glass of red wine down the front of my dress. It didn't just splash, it poured. Slow and deliberate, a dark river running from my collarbone to my waist, spreading like a bruise across white fabric that cost more than my first car. For half a second, the bridal suite froze. Then the room inhaled all at once. A bridesmaid gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice said, "Eyes, is that real?" Phones came out like muscle memory. Screens glowing, camera lenses pointed at me like I was a headline. And in the doorway, like the audience had been pre-invited, my parents clapped. My mother actually clapped. Not a nervous clap, not a confused reaction. A delighted little applause, the way people clap when a performer sticks a landing. My father laughed. A short bark of it like he couldn't believe his luck. I stared at them, and the strangest part was how normal they looked. Like they were watching a joke at a barbecue. Like I wasn't standing there in a ruined wedding dress with my stomach dropping through the floor. Tessa pulled back just enough to see my face, eyes bright with the kind of satisfaction that doesn't belong in family. "You're not getting your perfect day," she whispered, her breath sweet with wine. I didn't scream. I didn't slap her. I didn't cry the way everyone expected, the way Tessa was clearly hoping I would, so she could say I was crazy. And my parents could nod along like they'd been, right about me all along. I just looked down at the stain, then back up at her, and I felt something settle inside me, heavy, quiet, dangerous. My voice came out low and steady. "You have no idea what you just did," I whispered. Her smile faltered for the tiniest second, like she didn't understand the threat because it wasn't loud enough to feel real. Behind her, my mother stepped forward, face lit up, like this was finally her moment. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said loudly for the cameras. "It's just a dress." My father folded his arms, enjoying himself. "Maybe this is a sign," he said. The way he always talked about my life like it belonged to a committee. One of my bridesmaids, Maya, moved toward me with trembling hands. "Harper, we can fix." I lifted a hand gently, not to stop her help, to stop the chaos. I turned my head and looked at my wedding planner, who stood near the vanity with her mouth open, eyes flicking between me and the phones. "Give me 5 minutes," I said calmly. My planner blinked hard. "Harper." "5," I repeated, still calm. No one comes in. No one films me changing. If anyone tries, you tell security to remove them. My mother scoffed. "Remove who? Your family?" I looked at her for the first time directly, and the room got quieter. "Yes," I said. That single word landed like a slap because it was so flat. So final. Tessa's eyes narrowed. "Wow," she said, louder now. So you're kicking us out on your wedding day?" My father chuckled. "There she is," he murmured. The real Harper. The real Harper. The phrase that haunted my childhood. Anytime I had boundaries, I was the real Harper. Anytime I said no, I was showing my true colors. Anytime I didn't let them control the narrative, I was unstable. They trained me to feel guilty for protecting myself. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I stepped away from the mirror, lifted my chin, and walked out of the bridal suite without looking back at the stain. The hallway outside the chapel was bright, full of soft music and floral arrangements, and it felt like I was walking through someone else's life. Guests turned to look at me. I saw phones tilt up. I saw faces rearrange into curiosity, sympathy, hunger. Tessa followed, voice rising. "Tell them what happened," she called, loud enough for everyone. "Tell them why you're upset." My mother followed too, like she couldn't stand not to be seen. "She's always been jealous of her sister," she announced to a cluster of guests as if she was explaining weather. She can't handle attention. Jealous. That was their favorite word for me because it made my hard work sound like a flaw, because it made their cruelty sound like a response. And then Tessa added the extra knife, because she didn't just want to ruin my dress. She wanted to ruin my marriage. She slipped in close to my fiancé, Evan, who was waiting near the entrance with his groomsmen. His face was already tense, confused, eyes searching for mine. Tessa leaned toward him and said something I couldn't fully hear over the music, but I saw the change in his posture, and I saw his jaw tighten. He looked at me like there was suddenly a question in his head that didn't belong there, and my sister's mouth curled at the corner, like she'd just planted a seed and knew it would grow. My father put an arm around Evan's shoulder as if he was comforting him. "Son," he said, loud enough for people nearby to hear, "we just want you to know what you're marrying into." My mother nodded, eyes shiny with fake concern. "We're just trying to protect you." Protect him from me. On my wedding day. I walked straight up to Evan, close enough to see the confusion and hurt fighting in his eyes. I didn't plead. I didn't defend myself in front of an audience. I just said, quietly, "If you believe anything they say before you ask me, then this isn't a wedding. It's a warning." His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Harper?" I stepped back and turned to my planner again. "Cancel it," I said, clearly. My mother let out a laugh like I'd told a joke. "Oh my God, you're really doing this?" "Yes," I said. Tessa's smile widened, triumphant. "Good," she said. "Run, that's what you do." My hands were shaking now, but I kept them at my sides. I kept my shoulders square. Because my grandfather used to tell me something when I was young, whenever my parents and Tessa backed me into a corner and waited for me to crack. He'd tap the side of his coffee mug, look me straight in the eye, and say, "Silence isn't weakness, sweetheart. It's control." I didn't have my grandfather with me in that hallway, but I had his voice. So I walked past the guests, past the flowers, past the aisle that was supposed to be mine. Aisha and I left the building without giving them a single tear to feed on. Outside, the air hit my face cold and clean. My car was parked at the far end of the lot. I could hear the murmur behind me growing into a swarm, could feel eyes on my back, could imagine the captions people would type over the videos they'd just taken. I didn't stop. I drove. And the moment I turned onto the main road, my phone started lighting up like a fire alarm. Texts from bridesmaids, missed calls from Evan, unknown numbers already reaching for gossip. Then my mother's message came through, bold as if she'd won. "You embarrassed us. Don't bother coming back." Back. As if I belonged to them. As if my life was a room they could lock or unlock, depending on my obedience. I didn't reply. And I drove straight to the only place that had ever felt like a safe harbor in my family. My grandfather's house. Because he was still alive, still sharp, and he'd been the only one who ever believed me when I said, "They're not joking, they mean it." And as I pulled into his driveway, my hands still trembling on the wheel, I realized something that made my throat tighten even more than the wedding did. Tessa didn't just spill wine. She picked a fight with the version of me my family never knew existed. Grandpa opened the door before I even knocked. He always did that. Like he was already watching the driveway, already reading the world before it reached him. He took one look at my face, at the way I was holding my shoulders too tight, at the way my hands were still shaking even though I was trying to hide it. And he didn't ask for the full story in the doorway. He stepped aside and said, "Come in." The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Familiar. Safe. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Grandpa's walls were covered in framed photos and old newspaper clippings he never threw away. His recliner had the same faded spot where his hand always rested. I walked in, and my breath finally broke. Not a sob, not a dramatic collapse, just a shaky inhale that sounded like my body admitting it was tired. And Grandpa shut the door behind me, then turned the deadbolt with a slow, deliberate click. "I saw your mother's car at the church," he said, voice calm. "I saw your sister's face, too. That's enough context." I swallowed hard. I started. He raised a hand gently. "Sit," he said. I sat on the edge of his couch, still in the dress that looked like a crime scene. The red stain had dried darker. Every time I glanced down, it felt like another humiliation. Grandpa didn't flinch at it. He didn't pity me. He didn't act shocked like it was entertainment. He just went to the kitchen, poured 2 cups of coffee, and came back like this was what you did when someone you loved came home bleeding, quietly, without panic. He handed me a cup. "Tell me what happened," he said. So I did. I told him about the hug, the wine, the phones coming out, my parents clapping, Tessa whispering in my ear like she owned my pain, the way my mother turned it into a speech, the way my father tried to poison Evan's mind like he was auditioning for control. I told him the moment I said, "Cancel it," and the moment my mother texted, "Don't bother coming back." Grandpa listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took one slow sip of coffee and stared at the wall for a second, like he was watching a memory he'd already predicted. Then he nodded once. "They wanted you to beg," he said. My throat tightened. "Yes. They wanted you to break in front of a crowd," he continued, "so they could call you unstable and feel justified." I stared down at my cup. My hands were wrapped around it so hard my knuckles were pale. "I didn't," I said quietly. Grandpa's mouth softened, not into a smile, into something like respect. "No," he said. "You didn't." I finally looked up at him. "Tessa told Evan something," I said. "I didn't hear all of it, but I saw it. I saw his face change." Grandpa exhaled through his nose. "She planted a story," he said. "That's her favorite tool." I swallowed. What if he believes her? Grandpa leaned forward slightly. "Then he's not your husband," he said, simple and brutal in the way only old men who've watched decades of betrayal can be. The sentence hurt, but it also steadied me. Because Grandpa never comforted me with lies. He set his cup down and looked at me the way he had when I was a teenager, and my mother called me dramatic for crying. "Harper," he said, "you remember what I told you about people who cheer when you're hurt?" I nodded slowly. He tapped the coffee mug. "No, you don't hand them your future," he said. "Not because they deserve punishment, because you deserve peace." I stared at the stain on my dress and felt the anger try to crawl up my throat. "Peace," I repeated, like the word didn't belong to me. Grandpa leaned back. "Now," he said, "tell me what you're going to do next." The question was so calm it was almost shocking. I blinked. I don't know." "Yes, you do," he said. "You just don't want to say it out loud yet." My phone buzzed again on the cushion beside me. Evan. I watched it ring. I watched it stop. I watched a text pop up immediately after. "Please, just talk to me." I don't know what's happening. My throat tightened, but I didn't pick it up. Not yet. Because right now I wasn't sure if Evan was calling to understand, or calling because my parents had already gotten to him. Grandpa saw my eyes on the phone and said, "You don't owe anyone a performance." I breathed in slowly. I don't want them to win," I whispered. Grandpa nodded. "Then don't fight where they're strong," he said. "Fight where you're strong." I let that sit for a second. "Where I'm strong," I echoed. He pointed with his chin toward the hallway, toward the back bedroom he used as a quiet office. "You've been strong in silence for years," he said. "You built what you built by not talking." My stomach tightened because he was naming the thing my family didn't know, the thing that kept me alive. I'd been the black sheep since I was a kid, the one who thought she was better, the one who didn't call enough, the one who didn't beg enough, the one who didn't borrow money with enough gratitude. So I stopped showing them anything real, and I worked. I saved. I learned how to be invisible while I grew. I started with long hours at a property management company, taking every shift no one wanted. Nights, weekends, holidays. I learned leases, tenant law, maintenance schedules, budgets. I watched landlords run numbers like chess games. Then I started doing it myself. One duplex, then another. Then a small building nobody wanted because it needed work and people didn't want to wait for returns. I waited. I fixed things. I refinanced when rates made sense and kept my name off anything flashy. I used plain LLC names, basic bank accounts, clean spreadsheets, everything boring, everything quiet. Grandpa was the only person who knew. Not because I wanted praise, because I needed one person who wasn't rooting for my failure to know I wasn't imagining my own future. He'd helped me with my first down payment years ago, an amount he called a loan, but never asked back for. He taught me how to read people in negotiations. He taught me to keep my mouth shut around anyone who clapped when I fell. And now he was looking at me like he was waiting for me to use what I'd built. Not to hurt them, but to stop letting them hurt me. I set my coffee down slowly. I'm going to disappear, I said. Grandpa nodded. Good, he said. I'm going to let the wedding die quietly, I continued, voice steadier now. No posts, no explanation, no defending myself in comments. I'm going to take a few weeks, handle my business, and let them sit with what they did. Grandpa's eyes warmed slightly. That's not revenge, he said. That's discipline. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. You made us look like monsters. Call me now. Then my father. You owe your sister an apology. Then Tessa, the boldest one. Tell everyone the truth or I will. I stared at the screen and felt my heartbeat slow instead of spike. Because suddenly I could see the pattern. They didn't want reconciliation, they wanted control. I handed my phone to Grandpa without a word. He read the messages, then looked up at me with a calm that felt like armor. They're scared, he said. I frowned. Of what? Grandpa's mouth twitched. Of you, he said. Not the you they made up, the you that walks away. I swallowed. But they still think I'm broke, I said quietly. They still think I'm nothing without them. Grandpa leaned forward, voice low. Then let them keep thinking that, he said. For now. I felt my throat tighten. For now. He stood and walked to his office. I then came back with a small metal lockbox, scuffed, old, heavy. He set it on the coffee table between us like it was a promise. I don't trust them, he said simply. I never have. I stared at the box. What is that? Grandpa put his palm on top of it. Copies, he said, of the things you've built. The boring proof. The stuff people like your parents can't laugh away. My stomach tightened. Why keep copies? Because people like them don't stop at humiliation, Grandpa said. They escalate when they realize you're not coming back. I swallowed hard. You think they'll come after me? Grandpa's eyes held mine. I think they'll come after what they believe you owe them, he said. And the moment they feel desperate, they'll try to attach themselves to you like a life raft. He tapped the lockbox once. This, he said, not keeps you one step ahead? I stared at that box like it was both comfort and warning. Then Grandpa's landline rang, an old sound that always meant something serious because no one called that number unless they needed him. He picked it up, listened for a second, and his face changed. Not fear. Attention. He looked at me and covered the receiver. That was your mother, he said quietly. She thinks you're coming back tonight. She said she's bringing Evan over so you can explain yourself in front of everyone. My stomach went cold. Because I could picture it perfectly. My parents, my sister, Evan confused and cornered. All of them waiting to force a scene in Grandpa's living room. To rewrite the story with witnesses. Grandpa uncovered the receiver and said into the phone, voice calm and deadly polite, No. Then he hung up. He looked at me. Pack a bag, he said. You're staying here. And tomorrow you're going to make one decision that changes the next year of your life. My throat tightened. What decision? Grandpa's eyes stayed steady. Whether you're going to keep living as their black sheep, he said, or finally let the world see what you really are. I stayed at Grandpa's that night like he told me to. Not because I couldn't afford a hotel, because for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be alone with the noise my family left behind. I took a shower in his guest bathroom and watched red water spiral down the drain until it ran clear. I folded the ruined dress into a trash bag because I couldn't stand seeing it hanging like a dead thing in a closet. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone until my eyes burned. Evan called again. Then again. Then my bridesmaids started texting in worried bursts. Screenshots of posts, people tagging my name, the wine clip already spreading like a campfire rumor. My mother's message came in a little later, colder than the first one. Everyone saw what you are. Don't come crying when he leaves you. And my father followed with the sentence he always used when he wanted to shrink me back into childhood. You embarrassed the family. Fix it. And then Tessa, the final twist of the knife. I told him the truth. You know what I mean. I stared at that last one for a long time. Because it wasn't just sabotage. It was a threat. A dare. Grandpa knocked once and walked in without waiting, carrying a folded blanket and that scuffed metal lockbox tucked under his arm like he'd decided something. He sat in the chair across from the bed and looked at me the way he did when he wanted me to hear him, even if I didn't like it. Answer one question, he said. Why did she do it? I swallowed. Because she hates me. Grandpa shook his head slightly. That's the symptom, he said. Not the root. I looked down at my hands, and they were still trembling if I paid attention. The root, he repeated gently. I exhaled slowly. Because she wanted me to beg, I said. Because she wanted my wedding to become her stage. Because if she ruins what I build, she doesn't have to build anything. Grandpa nodded, like that was the truth he was waiting for. And because your parents wanted the same thing, he added. I frowned. They like her. They like control, Grandpa corrected. Tessa is their tool. You were their target. My throat tightened at how cleanly he said it. Grandpa tapped the lockbox. You've spent years building quietly, he said. And you did it the right way. Boring, disciplined, invisible. The kind of growth that doesn't require applause. He slid the lockbox toward me. Now you're going to use that same discipline for the next part. I stared at the box like it was heavy, even without opening it. What's the next part? I asked. Grandpa leaned forward slightly. You decide what gets access to you, he said. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally, financially. Financially. That word landed different in my chest because my family didn't just want my attention. They wanted my resources, my time, my stability, my ability to rescue them. They'd never called it that, of course. They called it family. But family was always a bill in my house, and I'd always been expected to pay. I set my phone down face down on the bed like I was putting it to sleep. I'm not going back, I said quietly. Grandpa's eyes softened. Good, he replied. Then don't go back with your voice either. The next morning, I didn't post an explanation. I didn't write a long caption. I didn't argue with strangers in comments like my pain was a debate topic. I did the opposite of what my family wanted. I went silent. I sent one message to my wedding planner. Thank you, I'm sorry. Please cancel everything that can be canceled and tell vendors I'll handle the remainder privately. I sent one message to my bridesmaids. I'm safe. I'm taking a break. Please don't engage online for me. And I sent one message to Evan. Not emotional, not dramatic, just true. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. My sister staged the wine. My parents cheered. Whatever she told you was meant to make you doubt me in public. If you want the truth, meet me alone. No one else. Then I turned my phone off for 6 hours. 6 hours felt like a lifetime. but it was the first time I'd had air in my lungs since the glass hit my dress. When I turned it back on, Evan had replied with a single sentence that made my stomach drop and settle at the same time. "Tell me where. I'm coming alone." We met 2 days later in a quiet coffee shop on the far side of town, the kind with chipped mugs and no one filming anything because no one cared. Evan walked in looking like a man who hadn't slept. His eyes were red. His shoulders were tense. He sat across from me and didn't touch my hands because he wasn't sure he had the right. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. I didn't know what was real. I didn't punish him for the confusion. Confusion was human. I punished the people who manufactured it. "What did she tell you?" I asked calmly. Evan swallowed hard. "She said you were using me," he admitted. "Nah, she said you'd done this before, married for stability, kept secrets, hid money, and—" He stopped, like the words tasted disgusting. "She said you had someone else." I stared at him for a second. Then I nodded. "Okay," I said. Evan blinked. "Okay?" "Okay," I repeated, still calm. That tells me exactly what she was trying to do. I slid my phone across the table and played a short clip my planner had sent me. Not the whole humiliation, just one clean piece. The moment Tessa tilted the glass. The moment my parents clapped. The moment she leaned in and whispered, her lips forming the words even if you couldn't hear them. Evan watched it without blinking. When it ended, he looked up slowly and his face changed, like something inside him finally locked into place. "She did that on purpose," he said hoarsely. "Yes," I replied. He stared at the table. "Your parents?" he started. "They cheered," I said flatly. "That's who they are." Evan's jaw flexed. "And the someone else's thing." I slid one more thing across the table. A screenshot. Not a dramatic one. Just a simple calendar log from my phone. Work travel, property walkthroughs, meetings, all time-stamped. A life that made her lie impossible if you looked at it with adult eyes. Evan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 2 months and 2 days. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I should have asked you first." I nodded once. "You did now," I said. "That's what matters." He reached into his pocket slowly and placed something on the table. The ring. "I don't want this to end like this," he said. "But I also don't want to be a man you have to convince." I looked at the ring, then at him, and my chest tightened. Not with longing, with clarity. "I'm not making a decision about us today," I said quietly. "I'm making a decision about access." Evan swallowed. "Your family." "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Whatever you decide," he said. "I'll respect it." When I walked out of that coffee shop, I didn't feel fixed, but I felt upright again. 2 weeks later, I moved out of Grandpa's guest room. Not because I didn't want to stay, but because I needed my own space to breathe. I moved into a small 2-bedroom unit with neutral walls and a view of a parking lot. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that screamed wealth, just quiet. Just mine. The funny thing about building an empire quietly is that you don't live like a billboard. You live like a person who doesn't want anyone asking questions. And my family didn't ask questions. They didn't care enough. They were too busy celebrating what they thought was my collapse. At least they were. Until the bills caught up with them. Because while I was healing in silence, my parents' life started cracking in places they couldn't clap away. Their mortgage had been stretched for years. Their savings was thinner than their pride. And Tessa, who loved looking rich more than she loved being stable, had been living on maxed out credit and borrowed time. I didn't know the details yet. I didn't need to. I felt it in the way their messages changed. At first they were angry. "Fix this." Then they were smug. "He'll leave you." Then slowly they turned cautious. My mother's texts became shorter. My father stopped sending commands and started sending questions. And then, exactly 2 months after the wedding, 2 months after the wine and the applause, Grandpa called me one morning while I was at my kitchen counter, coffee in hand, looking at my schedule like it was a shield. Harper, he said, voice calm. What? I asked. Grandpa paused like he was choosing words carefully. Your mother just called me, he said, and she didn't sound proud. My stomach tightened. What did she want? Grandpa exhaled once. She asked if you were still being stubborn, he said. And then she asked something else. I felt my pulse in my throat. What? Grandpa's voice dropped slightly. She asked if it was true, he said, that you own half the rentals on the east side. My hand went cold around the mug. Because my family didn't ask questions unless they were desperate. How, and the only way they would have even formed that question was if something about me had surfaced somewhere they couldn't ignore. Grandpa let the silence stretch just long enough to make my skin prickle. Then he added quietly, Harper, I think they just saw you on television. I didn't even remember turning on the TV. I just knew I was suddenly standing in Grandpa's living room with the remote in my hand, the morning news humming in the background like a normal day, while my heart beat like it was trying to warn me. Grandpa sat in his recliner, calm, watching my face more than the screen. Put it on Channel 7, he said. I did. A local anchor with perfect teeth was smiling into the camera. A banner ran along the bottom, blurred in my mind because I wasn't reading it yet. I was feeling it. Then the segment changed. A shot of a renovated brick building I knew like the back of my hand. Fresh paint, new windows, a small crowd near a ribbon cutting. A reporter's voice came in over the footage. A once neglected property now bringing new life to the east side? My stomach dropped. The camera panned. And there I was. Not in a dress. Not in a moment of humiliation. In a plain navy blazer, hair pulled back neatly, posture steady, holding a pair of oversized scissors with the mayor and a few community leaders. It was from last month, a project I'd quietly finished and tried to keep as low profile as possible because I didn't build my life for applause. I built it for safety. The reporter's voice continued. Led by local housing entrepreneur Harper Lane, founder of Lane Street Holdings. Founder Holdings. The words hit like a slap and a relief at the same time. On screen, I was smiling politely, not performing, just present, real. The anchor's tone was warm, harmless. Lane Street Holdings now manages multiple residential properties across the area, focusing on renovations and stable housing. My fingers tightened around the remote. My grandpa watched me carefully. Breathe, he said. I inhaled slowly, feeling my ribs fight it at first. Then the air went in. The reporter cut to a quick interview clip of me. I could hear my own voice, calm and measured. We kept it quiet for a long time, TV me said, because the work mattered more than attention. Grandpa's mouth twitched. That's my girl, he murmured. Then the reporter added the line that made my throat go dry. Public records show Lane Street Holdings has expanded rapidly in recent years, with renovations and acquisitions valued in the multi-million range. Multi-million, not a number. A category. A spotlight. I didn't feel proud, not in that second. I felt exposed. Because a spotlight doesn't just illuminate you, it shows predators where you are. The segment ended with applause from the crowd at the ribbon cutting. Use a quick montage of the renovated units, and the anchor smiling again, like this was just uplifting local news. To me, it felt like a door had been unlocked. Behind me, Grandpa's landline rang, sharp and old-fashioned, the sound of consequence. He picked up, listened for 2 seconds, and I watched his expression shift into something almost bored. Because he already knew who it was. He didn't even say hello. Elaine, he said. My mother's voice came through loud enough that I could hear it from where I stood. Walter, there you are. Thank God, she said, breathless like she'd been running. We need to talk about Harper. Grandpa leaned back like this was a business call. No, he said calmly. You need to talk to Harper, and she decides if you get to. My mother's voice sharpened. Don't do this, she snapped. This isn't the time for stubborn pride. Grandpa's eyes flicked to me. He covered the receiver and said, Put her on speaker or not. I stared at the phone like it was a snake. Then I nodded once. Grandpa pressed a button and set the handset down on the side table. My mother's voice filled the room. Harper, she said, and the way she said my name was different than it had been the day she clapped at my ruined dress. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cruel either. It was cautious. Hi, I said simply. There was a pause, a breath. Then she went straight to the point, like admitting softness would cost her. We saw the news, she said. I figured, I replied. My father's voice cut in from somewhere near her. This isn't about that, he said quickly. We have a situation. A situation. And that was their favorite phrase when they wanted to avoid the word they deserved. Consequences. I didn't respond. Silence was my leverage. My mother exhaled, impatient. Tessa made a mistake, she said, like it was a spilled drink and not a destroyed day. I glanced at Grandpa. He lifted his eyebrows slightly, like, listen, let them talk. My mother continued. She didn't mean for it to go that far. I kept my voice flat. She meant to humiliate me. My father spoke again, quieter now. Harper, we're in trouble. The words hung there. Trouble was never something my parents admitted. They were the kind of people who demanded rescue with pride, still on their faces. But now his voice sounded like someone who realized the door he kicked earlier might be the only door left. What kind of trouble? I asked. My mother answered too fast. Our financial, she said. We're handling it. We need to smooth things over. Smooth things over. In my chest, something cold clicked into place. This wasn't apology, this was strategy. I looked at Grandpa again. His expression didn't change. But I saw the message. Don't argue, ask questions. So I did. What happened? I asked calmly. There was a pause long enough to tell me the truth was ugly. Then my father said it, voice strained. Tessa has debt, he admitted. A lot. My mother snapped. She was trying to keep up appearances. She's been under pressure. Pressure to look rich, Grandpa murmured, not into the phone, just into the air like an observation. My mother's voice got tighter. A lender called, she said. She took out loans. She used credit. She got behind. Now they're threatening to come after. Come after what? I asked. Another pause. My father's voice dropped. Our house, he said. There it was. Their real fear. Not Tessa's consequences. Their comfort. My mother rushed in. We co-signed something. We didn't know she was that far gone. She said it was temporary. She said she had it covered. I felt my stomach settle, heavy and calm. Let me guess, I said. She was going to pay it back after my wedding, after she got her hands on gifts, after she attached herself to me. Silence, then my mother whispered, Harper. And for the first time, I heard something I never thought I'd hear from her. Not love, not pride. Fear. We're going to lose everything, she said. I stared at the wall for a second and my mind flashed back to the bridal suite. The wine pouring, the phones, eyes the clapping. My mother smiling in my face as she watched me bleed. And now, 2 months later, her voice shaking because she was the one bleeding. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't gloat. I just let it be what it was. A consequence, I said quietly. My father's voice cracked. Please, he said. We're your parents. The line was so familiar it almost made me laugh. They only pulled that card when they wanted something. Never when I was on the curb. Never when I was the black sheep. My mother tried again, softer this time, and it was worse because it sounded rehearsed. We were wrong, she said. We shouldn't have cheered. We shouldn't have laughed. Tessa crossed a line. I waited. Because if she was truly sorry, she would say my name like it mattered, not like a resource. She swallowed. Can we come over? She asked. Can we talk? As a family. I looked at Grandpa. He didn't answer for me. He never did. But he leaned forward slightly, eyes steady, and said something so quiet it felt like a rope in my hands. Don't let guilt make you generous, he whispered. Let wisdom do it. I stared at the phone, then said, calm and clear, you can come talk, but not at my place. And not with Tessa. My mother's breath hitched. What? Tessa doesn't get access to me, I repeated. Not right now. My father rushed. Harper, please, she's... No, I said flatly. You don't get to negotiate my boundaries while asking for help. Silence again. Then my mother spoke, voice tight. Fine, she said. We'll come, just us. Grandpa's, I said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My father exhaled like he'd been holding his breath underwater. Thank you, he said quickly. I, like gratitude, could replace accountability. I didn't say you're welcome. I said, bring the paperwork because I wasn't going to be manipulated by vague fear. My mother paused. What paperwork? Whatever you signed, I said. The loan, the cosign, the notices, everything. She didn't like that. People like my mother hated records when records weren't theirs. But she answered anyway, because desperation makes people obedient. Okay, she said quietly. Grandpa reached over and clicked the speaker off without saying goodbye. The room went silent again, but it was a different silence now, one that held power. I stared at the TV screen, now showing a cheerful weather forecast, as if my life hadn't just been broadcast and weaponized. I didn't want them to find out like that, I whispered. Grandpa nodded. I know, he said. How, but maybe you needed it. I frowned. Needed what? Grandpa's gaze held mine. To see how fast they switch masks when they think you're useful, he said. And to learn the difference between forgiveness and access. My throat tightened. Because tomorrow wasn't just going to be them begging. It was going to be a test. A test of whether I would confuse mercy with surrender, and whether my family's apology was real, or just another loan application with my name on it. At 10 a.m. sharp, my parents' car rolled into Grandpa's driveway, like it was arriving at court. Slow, careful, rehearsed. I watched from the living room window with my arms folded, not tense, just contained. Grandpa sat in his recliner like a lighthouse, calm and unmovable, the kind of calm that makes liars feel itchy. My mother stepped out first, clutching a thick envelope so tight her fingers looked stiff. My father followed with a manila folder tucked under his arm like it was going to bite him. No sister. That alone told me this wasn't a family talk. This was a rescue mission. They walked up the steps. Grandpa opened the door before they knocked. My mother tried to smile. It came out thin. Dad, she said. Too sweet. Grandpa didn't step aside immediately. He stood in the doorway like a gate. Elaine, he replied. Then he looked at my father. Robert. My father nodded once, eyes flicking past him to me like he was looking for the easiest route to what he wanted. Grandpa shifted slightly. Shoes off, he said, as if we were just doing house rules. My mother blinked. What? Shoes off, Grandpa repeated calmly. If you're going to bring desperation into my house, at least don't bring dirt with it. My father's jaw tightened, but he complied. My mother did too, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. They stepped inside. I didn't hug them. I didn't offer water. I didn't play host to the people who clapped when I broke. I stayed where I was near the fireplace, posture steady. My mother glanced at my face like she was bracing for a slap. Harper, she said softly. I waited. My father cleared his throat. Thank you for agreeing to talk. I stared at the folder under his arm. You brought paperwork, I said. My mother nodded quickly, relieved I'd given her something practical to hold on to. Yes, she said. We brought everything. Grandpa pointed to the dining table without sitting. Up. Sit, he said. They sat. I stayed standing. My father placed the folder down and opened it like it was a confession. Inside were printed notices, bold headers, warning language, those cold blocks of text designed to make grown adults feel like children again. My mother slid one page toward me, hands trembling. Please, she said. Just look. I looked. Not like a daughter, like a person reading facts, past due amounts, late fees, default notice. A date circled in pen where something shifted from manageable to irreversible. Foreclosure wasn't a word they said out loud yet, but it hovered in the white space like smoke. My father's voice came out rough. We co-signed, he admitted. For Tessa. Grandpa made a small sound. Half sigh, half, of course. My mother rushed to explain like speed could make it less pathetic. She said it was temporary. She said she had a plan. She said the wedding would... She stopped, throat tightening. The wedding would what? I asked calmly. My mother's eyes flashed with shame, then went wet. She said once you were married, you'd calm down, she whispered. She said, you'd be easier. Easier. Not loved, not healed. Easier to control. My stomach went cold, but my voice didn't change. So you cheered when she ruined my dress, I said, because you thought it would break me into something manageable. My father looked down at the table. My mother's face crumpled slightly, like the truth finally had a place to land. We didn't think, my mother started. Yes, Grandpa cut in calmly. You did. You've been thinking that way her entire life. My mother flinched like she'd been slapped, but Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. My father finally looked up at me, eyes tired. We were wrong, he said. We handled it wrong. We let it get out of control. Out of control, I repeated softly, and my mouth almost twisted. You mean me leaving without begging? My father swallowed. We didn't expect you to disappear, he admitted. Grandpa leaned forward a fraction. That's because you've trained her to believe she needed your permission to exist, he said. And when she didn't ask for it, you panicked. My mother wiped her cheek fast like she was angry at her own tears. We're here to apologize, she said, forcing the words out like they tasted bitter. We shouldn't have cheered. We shouldn't have laughed. It was cruel. I waited. My mother's shoulders sank. I was jealous, she confessed suddenly, voice breaking. There, I said it. I was jealous because you were about to have something pure. Something I couldn't control. My father's face tightened. Elaine, no, she snapped at him, then looked back at me. I was jealous that people were looking at you with love, not obligation. And instead of fixing myself, I joined, your sister in destroying it. The room went quiet. Not dramatic quiet. Real quiet. I didn't forgive her for saying it, but I recognized something I'd rarely heard in my house. Accountability without a punchline. My father rubbed his palm over his face. And I was angry, he admitted, voice low, because you didn't need us. You never needed us the way Tessa did. And that made me feel useless. Grandpa stared at him. So you punished Harper for being strong, he said flatly. Father of the year. My father's shoulders slumped. He didn't defend himself. He couldn't. My mother pushed another page toward me. We're going to lose the house, she whispered. We tried to refinance. We tried to sell things. Tessa, her voice tightened. Tessa's credit is destroyed. She's maxed out everything. And now, it's on us. I looked at the numbers again. It wasn't a small mess. It was the kind of mess built by someone who thought image was more valuable than reality. I exhaled slowly, then asked the only question that mattered. Where is she? I said. My mother's lips trembled. At home, she said. She's she's embarrassed. She's scared. Grandpa's voice was calm. She's angry she got caught, he corrected. My father leaned forward, eyes pleading now. Harper, he said quietly, we're asking for help. There it was, the sentence they'd been circling like cowards. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once. I know, I said. My mother's eyes widened slightly, relief trying to crawl into her face. I stopped it with my next sentence. You're not getting cash, I said calmly. And you're not getting access. My father blinked. What? You want help? I continued. Then help happens my way. Grandpa's mouth twitched slightly, the tiniest hint of pride. I leaned on the back of a chair, steady. I will make one payment, I said, directly to the lender. Not to you, not to Tessa. One payment that buys you time to sell what you should have sold months ago. My mother's breath hitched. Harper, and you'll do 3 things, I added, voice still even. 1, you apologize to Evan. Not for me. For what you did to him, a real apology. No excuses. My father nodded quickly, desperate. Okay. 2, I said, Tessa doesn't get my number. She doesn't get my address. She doesn't get access to me through you. If she wants to apologize, she writes a letter, a real one. And she accepts no if that's what she gets. My mother flinched. She's our daughter. And I'm yours too, I said softly, and the softness made it sharper. Remember that this time. My mother went still. 3, I continued. You stop telling people I overreacted at my wedding. You stop rewriting that story. If anyone asks, you tell the truth. She humiliated me, and you cheered. My father swallowed hard. That will make us look like what you were, I said. Silence. Then Grandpa spoke, voice low and steady. This is the price of mercy, he said. Truth. My mother's face crumpled again. She nodded, small. Okay, she whispered. My father's eyes went glossy. Okay, he echoed. I stared at them for a long moment, feeling something shift inside me. Not warmth, not reunion. Closure. Because the help I was offering wasn't a return to the old script. It was a boundary with a small bridge attached. Then the front doorbell rang. Grandpa didn't move fast, but he moved with purpose. He rose from his chair like a judge standing to end a hearing. He went to the door. I didn't have to see who it was to know. Tessa's voice came through, strained and high. Open up. My mother's shoulders tensed, my father's eyes widened. Grandpa opened the door, just a crack. Tessa, he said calmly. I need to talk to her, Tessa snapped. Grandpa's voice stayed flat. No. Tessa's tone sharpened. You're seriously doing this? After everything? We're about to lose the house. Grandpa didn't budge. You should have thought about houses before you poured wine on a wedding dress, he said. Tessa inhaled sharply, then tried her favorite tool, victimhood. She always acts like she's better than me. Stop, Grandpa said, quiet but final. If you want to be heard, speak like a human. There was a pause. Then Tessa's voice came back smaller, shaky. I messed up, she said. Grandpa looked back at me over his shoulder. He didn't ask me what to do. He didn't need to. He knew I'd choose my own pace. I stepped forward until I was close enough to hear her clearly, but not close enough to be pulled into her gravity. I'm not letting you in, I said calmly. Tessa's breath hitched. Harper, you humiliated me, I continued, and you enjoyed it. I'm not giving you access to me just because your debt is finally louder than your ego. Her voice broke. I didn't think it would. Yes, I said, still even. You did. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believed she was sorry now. Not because she'd suddenly grown a conscience, because pain finally taught her what empathy couldn't. And that mattered. Because lessons learned the hard way are still lessons. But forgiveness isn't a door you throw open, it's a weight you put down. I forgive you, I said quietly. My mother made a small sound behind me like she couldn't believe it. Tessa exhaled like her lungs had been locked for weeks. Thank you. Don't confuse forgiveness with access, I added. You're not coming back into my life the way you were. Tessa's voice went thin. So, that's it? That's it for now, I said. If you want to be different for a long time. Not for a crisis. Not for money. For yourself. Grandpa nodded once, satisfied. Tessa stood there outside the door, crying without theatrics for once, and then she whispered, Okay. And she left. My mother started sobbing quietly at the table. My father stared at his hands like he was seeing them for the first time. Grandpa closed the door, turned the deadbolt, one clean click, and came back to his chair. I looked at my parents. I'll make the payment today, I said. But the terms stand. They nodded quickly, almost afraid I'd change my mind if they breathed wrong. That afternoon, I paid the lender directly. One controlled move, no cash in their hands, no new leash around my neck. It didn't solve their life. It gave them a chance to solve it themselves. A few months later, my parents downsized. They sold what they should have sold years ago. The house didn't swallow them whole, but it did humble them. Tessa got a second job. She stopped posting fake luxury. She stopped trying to win attention by destroying mine. We didn't become best friends. We became something rare in my family. People who finally understood consequences. One night, Grandpa and I sat on his porch with 2 mugs of coffee, the air quiet and honest. Forgiveness, Bertie told me, isn't telling someone they were right. It's refusing to carry their poison in your body. He looked at me and added, but boundaries are how you keep them from handing you a new cup. I nodded because I finally understood. You can forgive someone and still lock the door. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive them but keep your distance? Or would you cut them off completely? Tell me in the comments. If this story hit you, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.